Tszyu didn't just beat Errol Spence, he ended this man's career just like he promised. But a rule got changed 11 days before the fight. And what Errol Spence mentioned to Tszyu after the fight, nobody saw coming. So can we call it a spade? Because what happened in Sydney on July 26th, that was not a boxing match. It was a public retirement ceremony. And Tszyu was holding the pen. 12-round unanimous decision. 118 to 110, 117 to 111. That happened twice. It was not close. It wasn't even debatable. A career best beatdown of a man who walked into that arena as the favorite. A former unified welterweight king, a 2012 Olympian, and a future Hall of Famer. And here is the wild part. Tszyu called his shot. At the final press conference in front of the world, the Australian looked at the legend that he grew up watching and said, quote, "I want to punch him as hard as I can in the face, in the body, every limb. I want him to feel the pain, and I want to make it his last fight." And 48 hours later, done. Career over. But to understand how crazy the results actually really is, you need to see the receipts, because almost every big name in boxing got this completely wrong. Let's look at the receipts. CBS called this the loser leaves town fight, and they picked Spence by TKO in round 7. Former world champ Raul Marquez said on ESPN, quoted, saying, "I think Spence is going to win a unanimous decision." He even said that Tszyu is, and this is brutal, nowhere near his father's status. People thought he would be like his dad, or even better, but he's not. Ouch. The bookies had Spence at plus 177, a clear favorite in Tsyu's backyard, but not everyone drank the Kool-Aid. Legendary trainer Robert Garcia, he smelled blood. Did Spence take this fight just to have a big payday? Because he knows he doesn't have much left. His pick, Tszyu wins, and it could have been a stoppage. At this point, Spence might not have anything left. Teddy Atlas, he backed Tszyu as well, pointing at the one thing you cannot fake: 3 years of ring rust and bad left hooks. Patrick Stumberg dropped the coldest line, weak. Spence, he got absolutely mollywopped the last time he laced up gloves. Remember, the last image we had of Errol Spence was Terrence Crawford dropping him 3 times and stopping him in the 9th. So the question that boxing fans are asking, was the layoff a reset button or a countdown clock? Now here is where it gets spicy, because this buildup was nasty. Back in May at the announcement presser in Vegas, Tszyu offered a handshake. Spence looked at it and refused. Tszyu snapped, calling him a disrespectful fuck on the spot. Then Spence no-showed a scheduled interview in July and doubled down on the disrespect, telling PBC, quote, "Tszyu wasn't the best that I could get. I'm not crazy, but I fear nothing. Translation, you're beneath me." And then the rule change. The contracts said catch weight 158 pounds. But 11 days out, Spence's team requested that the weight be moved to the full middleweight limit of 160. And they got it approved. Let that sink in. A man who spent his entire career at 147, who has never fought above welterweight, couldn't handle 158, needing an extra 2 pounds? That's a massive red flag. But here is what tells you everything about Tim's agreed instantly. His words, "I don't want any excuses. I want him here, refreshed, rejuvenated, and not struggling with weight. I want everything on point. I want to beat up the best Errol Spence." That's not a contender talking. That's a man who already knew how this was going to end. And Tszyu did not stop there. He went full fortune teller. He told Ring Magazine, "Get in here, watch his last fight. This is his last goodbye." Then Tszyu predicted he would stop him earlier than Crawford did. Earlier than round 9? Okay. Even the promoters was framing this as the ending. America's Lou DiBella told 9 that a win over Spence was Tsyu's ticket back into the U.S. market. And while No Limits George Rose was selling the biggest fight ever staged on Australian soil. And honestly, Spence himself was leaking the truth all camp. Spence's own words, 8 weeks out, "I might be done after this. I've been thinking about vacationing spots." Vacation spots in the middle of training camp? Okay. Because one thing Tszyu did immediately after the final bell was the most disrespectful move I've ever seen in boxing. Before we get to this fight, remember, Tszyu woke up at 4 a.m. on fight morning and said 2 words out loud, "Oh fuck," because he knew one of them was getting retired that afternoon. Either Spence does it to me or I do it to him. Round 1, fireworks. 3 clean right hands snap Spence's head back, and the Texan is hurt inside of 3 minutes. Now watch his back leg. It's shaking. His balance is gone. And this is the moment that Robert Garcia's moment warning came true in real time. But give Spence credit. The man that they call the truth, he did not fold. Round 2 and 3, he outworked Tszyu with body shots and combination. The famous Mexican style pressure Marquez talked about, jab, jab, boom, it flickered back to life. And through 6 rounds, this was a genuine war, trading rounds in front of a screaming Sydney crowd. Then came round 7, and the dam broke wide open. Tszyu found his right hand, and it simply never missed again. Straight right, right hook, right uppercut, right to the body. The complimentary line of the night. It's the same punch over and over again. And Spence, he has no answer. By round 9, Sean Porter had it 5-3. Tszyu and Spence was holding on like the ring was tilting. Round 11, Ronnie Shields, the new trainer, tells Spence flat out, "You're not active enough." The old champion, he dug deeper than he had all night and won that round. One last flash of greatness. But round 12 told the whole story. Tszyu, the man with supposedly cracked armor, the guy who went 12 rounds with fedora, with half of this man's face hanging, was the one walking forward, driving Spence onto the ropes while a fatigued legend just tries to survive this bell. And when the cards were read, 118, 110, 117, 111, 17, 111, and there wasn't a soul in the arena who could argue against it. And now, the payoff, the moment the final bell rang. Before the scores were even read, Tszyu walked across the ring to the man he just retired and asked him for advice. I'm not making this up. Tszyu said he's a legend of the game, and I asked him what would be one tip that you would give me. And Spence, bleeding and beaten, career flashing before his eyes, gave it to him straight. Stay patient, and when you're not rushing in, you're very dangerous. When you wait, you're a good counter puncher, and you've got fast hands. Tszyu's response, I think that's how I won the fight. Chills. Spence said no opponent has ever done that in his entire career. Quote, it shows a guy who's trying to improve, is what Spence said. And here's the kicker. Terrence Crawford, the man who broke Spence 3 years ago, was sitting front row watching it all. And his verdict to fight him, TV was ice cold. He's been in a lot of wars, and that type of style, it can only go so far. Spence was off balance, he just didn't have it tonight. And when Bud Crawford says you didn't have it, you just didn't have it. Then Spence sat down at the press conference, his sunglasses hiding the damage, 20 family members in the room, his kids watching, and he called it. Yeah, for sure. It's over. I thank God that I'm gracious enough to leave the sport with my faculties intact. And that's the most honest thing a fighter has said in many years. As a fighter, I don't remember 12 rounds feeling like that. That's how I know it's time for me to hang them up. But before you feel sorry for Errol Spence, remember, this is the same man who told Tszyu you wasn't the best guy I could get. The disrespect came home to Sydney and got retired. So what now? For Tszyu, this changes everything. 18 months ago, Tszyu was 3-3 in 6 fights, brutally knocked out and written off by half the boxing world, as well as burning through his 3rd trainer in 12 months. Then he linked up with an Aussie Hall of Famer, Jeff French, and Tszyu said it clicked in 2 weeks. He is an unbelievable coach. He's like Wayne Bennett. Now he grabbed the mic in the ring and called out Lara, the WBA middleweight champion. And backstage, he went even further. Jermell Charlo, oh yeah, Jermell Charlo, 100%. I do want rest, but I do want to kick some ass again. And listen to what he said about beating Spence. I want to win a world title, but beating a great like Errol Spence beats any world title for me. Even the retired legend left him with a warning on the way out. Lara is super tricky. He's a grade A caliber opponent. And Spence, he walks away 28-2. A first ballot Hall of Fame resume with the one victory that most fighters never get. I'm in a sport where a lot of boxers and Hall of Famers or not retired broke. Even if I didn't have this fight, I would have been okay. Spence came back in his own words because we're in an era where people are scared to fail. I'm sure they wouldn't have the guts to do what I just did. Say whatever you want about this performance. Spence went out on his shield in enemy territory and left with his health, his money, and his dignity. So here's the war that I need you to settle in the comments. Pick a side, because there's no fence to sit on. Was this Tszyu announcing himself as a real middleweight threat, or did he just beat up a 3-year-old ghost of Errol Spence? Because Lara and the Charlos are a different animal, and half of you are already typing that Tszyu gets exposed the second he leaves Australia. Prove it. Drop your pick. Tszyu versus Lara. Who wins in what round and how? If you called Tszyu before this fight, while CBS and the so-called experts were picking Spence, put your receipts below. I'm pinning the best one, and I'm gonna shout you out in the next video. Now smash that like button if Tszyu earned your respect, and subscribe, because the second that Tszyu and Lara gets announced, your boy's breaking it down first. And you know you don't want the algorithm to decide when you're gonna find out. I'll see you on the next one. Holla at your boy. Peace. I'm out.